The subcommittee will come to order. I ask unanimous consent that the chair be authorized to declare a recess at any time without objection, so ordered. I want to welcome everyone to this hearing of the Military Personnel Subcommittee. Today's hearing is focused on the personnel policy makers who are charged with developing the policies, guidance, and programs that affect recruiting, accessions, assignments, benefits, career progression, and so much more. And it's no small secret that policies, especially personnel policies, drive military culture. Strategic leaders, in their efforts to form a shared belief system, risk substituting continuous oversight with policy and guidance on how to think, feel, and behave. And some of the most culturally transformative guidance and policies in the military services over the last decade have been in the personnel arena, most notably diversity, equity, and inclusion. For more than 10 years, former President Obama and President Biden have issued executive orders establishing a coordinated government-wide initiative to promote diversity and inclusion. Navigating these policies is no small task, especially considering the military personnel system that you are tasked with running is supposed to be based on merit, not social engineering. I'm concerned that policies you must implement not only contradict the military culture necessary to ensure an effective fighting force, but that the culture upheaval this administration is pushing on the DoD and on the military services may continue to lead to recruiting and retention problems. For example, DEI. It is no secret that the backlash to DEI policies has been very strong. Last week, Axios quoted Johnny Taylor, the president of Society for Human Resource Management, quote, "The backlash to DEI is real, and I mean in ways that I've actually never seen it before," end quote. And yet, even as Americans have pushed back, the Department of Defense continues to focus on DEI. This has an impact on recruiting and retention. This has an impact on potential service members seeing their future success as dependent on their race or gender, not merit. We are going to end our recruiting crisis by chipping away at merit-based personnel actions with requirements and directives to take. We are not going to end our recruiting crisis by chipping away at merit-based personnel actions with requirements and directives to take, for example, gender into consideration, as Lieutenant General Burt advocated for when addressing state LGBTQ laws. Quote, "If the good match for a job does not feel safe being themselves and performing at their highest potential at a given location, or if their family could be denied critical health care due to the laws in that state, I am compelled to consider a different candidate and perhaps less qualified," end quote. The bottom line is that I'm concerned, especially that this administration and the military services are dismissing the cultural changes that these personnel policies are forcing on the military without considering their effects on recruiting. It may just be a correlation that recruiting has struggled since the focus on DEI as a national security priority, but I'm deeply skeptical of that. This needs to be investigated. But now I want to thank our witnesses for being here today. Lieutenant General Douglas Stitt with the U.S. Army, Vice Admiral Richard Cheeseman, Jr., Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Personnel, Lieutenant General Caroline Miller with the Air Force, Lieutenant General James Glenn with the U.S. Marine Corps, and Catherine Kelly, the Deputy Chief of Space Operations for Human Capital. Before hearing from our witnesses, let me offer Ranking Member Kim an opportunity to make any opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all for joining. Without soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and guardians, we couldn't man military weapon systems, deliver humanitarian assistance, or effectively respond to security challenges around the globe. I've read your testimonies, and there is no doubt you are all concerned about a number of issues, including young people's decreasing propensity to serve, their lack of connection to the value of military service, and that affects also the changing recruitment landscape that's out there that the chairman and I have been grappling with this rest of the members on this committee. I share these concerns and would add that this is why I support taking the steps necessary to widen the pool of applicants we can draw from for our all-volunteer force. I'm encouraged by the prep courses that the Army and Navy have established to help potential recruits overcome physical fitness barriers into service and meet or exceed service and Department of Defense physical requirements. I'm encouraged by how the services are employing innovative tools to increase the impact and effectiveness of the recruiter force, from the Army's creation of a recruiter military career track to ensure that those who serve as first-line ambassadors in schools and communities across the country are well prepared, to the Navy's Recruiting Operations Center, which now monitors recruiting efforts in real time, and the Air Force's Barriers to Service review of internal policies, which resulted in an additional 6,800 people being eligible to serve as airmen. These are just a few examples of how you are all trying to think out of the box to encourage military service among our youth. Another important factor is ensuring we have the force we need is to pay attention to the quality of life needs of service members and their families. I'm excited that myself and many others on this subcommittee have been a part of the Quality of Life panel that released its report and recommendations last week. By focusing our efforts on solutions to address pay and compensation, we will make sure service members and their families have enough money to put food on the table. I often hear from many service members in my district who are stationed at Joint Base McGuire-Dix-Lakehurst about how they struggle to get access to the medical and child care that they need. These are issues that I know my colleagues on the other side of the aisle can agree need to be addressed. As I've said before, we ask our service members to be willing to make the ultimate sacrifice, which they voluntarily do day in and day out, which means that we owe it to them and their families to do everything we can to ensure that they have all that they need when they need it. Mr. Chairman, thank you for having this hearing today so we can discuss many of the important issues of personnel policies on the lives of our service members. And thank you to the witnesses again for being here, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Ranking Member Kim. Each witness will have the opportunity to present his or her testimony, and each member will have an opportunity to question the witnesses for 5 minutes. We respectfully ask the witnesses to summarize their testimony in 3 minutes or less. Your written comments and statements will be made part of the hearing record. With that, Lieutenant General Stitt, you may make your opening statement.
Good afternoon, Chairman Banks, Ranking Member Kim, distinguished members of this committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you on behalf of the soldiers and civilians of the United States Army. I submitted a statement for the record and want to highlight a few points from it now. The United States Army is amidst a fundamental transformation. We are adapting and changing capabilities, force structure, and our accessions enterprise. These collective efforts combine to enable ready combat formations while ensuring the care of our people and their quality of life is commensurate with their service. The Army senior leadership directed fundamental changes to improve the effectiveness of our accessions formations in the face of this challenging recruiting environment. These transformative efforts include enhancements of our recruiting workforce, engaging across the totality of the labor market, and a streamlined reporting structure. Compared to the same point last year, we are ahead in our accessions mission, and the Army is on pace to meet its FY 2024 end strength of 445,000 in the active component. The Army remains a great place to serve, as demonstrated by our historically high retention rates. In fiscal year 2023, the Army achieved 102% of its retention mission, and we remain on glide path to exceed our retention mission in 2024. We remain focused on critical programs that get upstream and prevent harmful behaviors from entering our formations. Our civilian workforce is a readiness multiplier across the total Army, and our investments in their capabilities are crucial for meeting the needs of the Army of the future. All of these efforts contribute to Army readiness and are vital for retaining our soldiers, civilians, and their families. For our Army families, we program $1.6 billion across fiscal years 2024 to 2028 to improve the Army family housing inventory. For our unaccompanied soldiers, we invested over $2.1 billion annually in the construction, sustainment, restoration, and modernization across fiscal years 2025 to 2029 for our barracks. With congressional support, we will keep the Army on a sustainable strategic path as we transform for the future. We will deliver ready combat formations with advanced capabilities to defend our nation and its interests. We understand the critical importance of preserving the all-volunteer force. We will continue investments in the quality of life for our soldiers, civilians, and their families. We will maintain and build cohesive teams and foster climates of trust grounded in our shared Army values. Chairman Banks, Ranking Member Kim, members of this committee, I thank you for your generous and unwavering support for our talented soldiers, civilian professionals, and their families. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Admiral Cheeseman.
Good afternoon, Chairman Banks, Ranking Member Kim, and distinguished subcommittee members. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I am honored to be here to serve and represent the sailors of our United States Navy, a high-quality, motivated workforce comprised of the best America has to offer. The Navy budget request for fiscal year 25 funds holistic efforts to support our warfighters and the foundation that supports them. It prioritizes our people with increases in military pay and basic allowances, and additional funds for recruiting and retention bonuses. The budget also prioritizes several quality of life and service initiatives, including tools and education for our leadership specifically to address mental health, suicide, and other harmful behaviors that build upon quality of service investments from the fiscal year 24 appropriation. And while I am grateful for your continued support of our sailors and their families, I must stress that our Navy remains most lethal and effective when we are able to execute under a full year budget. We remain in a very challenging recruiting environment. Our current projected miss is 6,700 against a 40,600 sailor mission, which is significantly better than what we anticipated at the beginning of the fiscal year, and I remain optimistic that investments in marketing and data analytics will show additional progress. As we position ourselves for success in the coming year, I look forward to sharing our continuous performance improvement. With recruiting challenges, there is a need for greater retention. I appreciate your steadfast support in funding sailor special incentive pays and bonuses, which are vital to targeting complex skill sets. These monetary incentives, coupled with several other initiatives, have helped us maintain our historically healthy retention levels. Last month, we rolled out Culture of Excellence 2.0, which focuses on building great people, great leaders, and great teams, and prepares our warfighters to dominate in combat, innovate and solve hard problems, and prevent harmful behaviors. It simplifies, streamlines, and aligns several programs and concepts into an actionable approach for building great culture, while providing tools for commanders to better understand and act on the needs of their people. Our men and women of the United States Navy, active, reserve, and civilian, along with their families, give our Navy the decisive edge. We must build strong warfighting teams, recruit and retain talented people from all of America, provide them world-class training and education, and ensure they are prepared for when their Navy story ends, whether it be a single enlistment or a full career. You and every American can be proud of your sailors and their families. I appreciate your continued support, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Lieutenant General Glenn.
Chairman Banks, Ranking Member Kim, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, it's my privilege to appear before you, along with Sergeant Major Jake Reif, to provide an overview of your Marine Corps through the lens of its personnel. Your Marine Corps and your Marines remain strong. Despite headwinds, we met the recruiting and retention missions for last year and expect to do so again this year. We've done so while maintaining top quality, something on which we will never compromise. Rest assured, the caliber of our Marines directly contributes to the warfighting capability and readiness of the United States Marine Corps. Despite our successes, recruiting still presents challenges, including a shrinking pool of eligible youth who are increasingly unfamiliar with military service. To counter these trends, we're modernizing how we recruit and are working to increase access to schools. We ask for your continued support of these efforts and also to continue to resource our vital advertising efforts. In short, we must collectively ensure the health of our all-volunteer force and the strategic advantage it provides: talent, capability, and warfighting excellence. I'm pleased to report that we continue to retain Marines at a historic pace, both in number and in quality. It reinforces that once an individual becomes a Marine, they desire to remain a Marine. And the desire for continued service speaks to our ethos. As we listen to Marines, they explain that being part of a team, accomplishing the mission, taking care of one another, and serving something bigger than themselves is what is motivating to continue in uniform. It also demonstrates that Marines believe in the leaders and processes that assign, promote, and award in a fair and transparent manner. Our talent management efforts to date remain foundational to force design and the future success of our Corps. They're helping us maximize the number of fully trained, qualified, experienced, and deployable Marines in the operational forces, and the overarching goal remains to increase Marine Corps warfighting capability and sustain our ability, really our responsibility, to be the nation's premier expeditionary force in readiness. And to that end, as we meet this afternoon, more than 30,000 Marines are forward deployed or forward stationed with their families prepared to respond should that call come. Warfighting readiness is built on trust, including trust in the Marine Corps' support of families. Family readiness for us is quite simply readiness. We're thankful for the attention you and the Quality of Life panel have given to important policies and programs, from childcare, healthcare, housing, spouse employment, or compensation. These are things that matter to Marines, to our families, and to me. We're leaning in with equal vigor in areas such as preventing destructive behaviors and increasing resilience through implementation of the Marine Corps Total Fitness Strategy, and I look forward to our dialogue on these topics as we continue to provide Marines with the highest quality of life. Again, it's my honor to represent the Marine Corps today, and I look forward to your questions. Semper Fidelis.
We understand that Lieutenant General Miller is not feeling well. She has submitted her opening statement for the record. All members have already have a copy of that, so we'll move on to Ms. Kelly.
Chairman Banks, Ranking Member Kim, distinguished members of this subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today representing the over 14,000 uniformed and civilian guardians of your Space Force. Our military and our nation's modern way of life depends on your Space Force successfully securing our national interests in, from, and to space. And while advanced technology is a vital component of our capabilities, our guardians are the foundation of our ability to maintain freedom of action in space. Building and maintaining this foundation starts with winning the fight for talent in an era where opportunities to work in the growing space economy are expanding at an unprecedented pace. The Space Force must be seen as an employer of choice. We need to offer competitive pay and benefits, compelling career paths, and strong support for spouses and families. We must attract the talent we need through these mechanisms. And we must ensure our target recruitment population know about these initiatives through strong branding and talent acquisition efforts. But our work does not stop with attracting this talent. We must continue to focus on keeping the trained and experienced guardians we've invested in and depend on. Thanks to your strong partnership, we continue to make progress serving as a pathfinder in modernizing the department's approach to talent management, starting with enhanced space education. For example, we are establishing a refreshed officer training course, which will expose new officers to the full spectrum of our space mission sets before they arrive at their first duty station. We have also partnered with some of our nation's top universities to provide new models of intermediate and advanced professional education for both uniformed and civilian guardians. We are revamping our performance assessment and leadership selection process, drawing best practices from both inside and outside the department to build high-performing teams and effective leaders. Perhaps most importantly, with your tremendous support, we are working to build a first-of-its-kind, flexible military service model as envisioned in the recently passed Space Force Personnel Management Act. This important legislation will enhance career flexibility while allowing us to retain invaluable technical talent that is so vital to the Space Force mission. We are doing all these things and much more, not just to take care of Guardians and their families, because it's the right thing to do, and it certainly is, but because taking care of Guardians is required to win. Warfighting success in space starts not with technology on orbit, but with the people who develop it, launch it, operate it, sustain, and exploit it in defense of our nation. Your support enables our Guardians to stand ready to face any challenge in the space domain. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today and to represent, and I look forward to your questions.
I want to thank all of our witnesses for your opening statements. I'll begin with questions and yield myself 5 minutes. Last year, the White House objected to a provision that I introduced in the NDAA based on merit and requiring all the branches to maintain merit in accessions and promotions, and require the military to base promotion decisions specifically on who is the best candidate for the job regardless of their race, inferring that somehow merit contradicted DOD's strategic advantage of drawing from a diverse group of people, is what the administration responded when they opposed my amendment. My question for all of you is this: do any of your personnel policies permit consideration of race or gender in promotion decisions? We'll start with Lieutenant General Stitt.
Chairman Banks, we approach promotion and selection from merit, looking at the whole of the candidate coming before any promotion or selection board. We do not set demographic quotas in our accessions, promotions, or selection.
So you don't permit consideration of race or gender in promotion decisions?
Our promotion and selection considerations are based upon the merit of the individual coming before that respective promotion or
Vice Admiral
selection board.
Cheeseman.
Chairman Banks, thanks for the question. Race and gender are not part of the merit-based decision for promotion. It's about being best and most fully qualified.
Lieutenant General Glenn.
Likewise, Chairman Banks, best and fully qualified status.
Lieutenant General Miller
Same for the Air Force.
and Ms. Kelly.
And the Space Force, sir.
Do you think that considering merit alone in promotion decisions would harm the department's lethality? We'll begin with you, Lieutenant General Stitt.
Chairman Banks, utilizing our merit-based promotion system, I believe we have the best land force in the world.
No, sir, we're looking to keep every talented individual, and it's based on merit.
Chairman, I opened with comments on warfighting readiness and lethality. That is our focus, and that's what our system emphasizes.
It's the same in the Air Force. We need the best and the brightest based on merit.
Sir, it's the same for the Space Force, merit-based to develop the best Guardians possible.
Do you think that considering merit alone in promotion decisions would harm, I'm sorry, I just asked you that. Okay, my last question on that note, now that universities are prohibited from engaging in affirmative action, are officers who join your services through ROTC or OCS less qualified than those who came through ROTC and OCS before the affirmative action ban? Simply yes or no.
We utilize a merit-based selection and assessment for applicants coming into both ROTC and the Officer Candidate School.
No, sir.
I don't see how they're affected by it at this point.
No, sir.
Not for the Space Force.
Okay. What policies have you implemented or changed to address overall what has been a very challenging recruiting year for each of your services?
Chairman Banks, the challenges that we face today didn't happen overnight. They won't be fixed overnight, but the United States Army Recruiting Command has aggressively transformed, looking at considering the totality of the labor force, not just focusing on high school graduates. We've recently created a new warrant officer specialty, a 420 Tango, which is a warrant officer who is focused on the technical and procedural aspects of our recruiting. We are creating a new military occupational specialty within our enlisted corps, MOS 42 Tango to serve as a professional recruiter. Recruiting Command has adjusted their training and intake to better upskill and reskill our recruiting workforce to operate within this challenging recruiting environment. We are piloting and innovating at scale across our recruiting stations around the globe to look at those stations where we are seeing small gains. How could those small gains be brought forward into a brigade and potentially across the command? So a variety of efforts.
We'll come back to the rest of you. I only have a few seconds left, and I want to ask the Vice Admiral a quick question. The Navy's Task Force 1 report claims that diverse organizations perform better on the findings from a 2015 McKinsey study. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir, I'm aware of that study.
Recently, that study has been completely debunked. Many sources have debunked the study. Have you gone back to correct the findings of the McKinsey study and divert from relying on it to justify DEI in the United States Navy?
Sir, I'm aware of the Econ Watch report that you're referring to. That's a recent report. The Navy is a learning organization, so we will certainly review that report and compare it to the McKinsey report. It's important to note that in the Task Force 1 Navy report, there was another reference from the National Academy of Sciences that talked about something very similar, a little bit of different respect. But I think it's important to note overall, as far as the Navy's program goes, that it's not about diversity for diversity's sake. As we've just talked about, it is about a meritocracy. It is about the best and most fully qualified. And we have created a program where, we want to make sure that all of our sailors and all of our future sailors understand that they can succeed in the Navy and they have access to the same opportunity.
Ranking Member Kim.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. While your services needs are each different, recruiting challenges remain a top area of concern for all of you. I understand the department is piloting some changes on how to look at some medical conditions and whether they impact a person's ability to serve. When it comes to medical accession standards regarding to recruitment efforts, do you think that they should be modernized to consider advances in the management of chronic conditions that may not necessarily impact the ability to deploy? I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Maybe we'll start with you, Lieutenant General.
Ranking Member Kim, we, the Army, participate along with the other services in the DoD Accessions Military Work Group, where we provide recommendations and review applicable Department of Defense instructions on medical accession standards.
Okay.
Sir, thanks for that question. Certainly the Navy is all for any accession standards that, any review of an accession standard that, allows us to bring somebody to boot camp, have them successfully complete that boot camp and their first tour. So we're actively involved in those groups. They're looking to assess each standard, case by case, and we look forward to continued development.
Okay, great.
Congressman, I would affirm in a similar manner, anything that in the modern era with what we know about medicine and what the long-term impacts on someone's ability to serve and deploy in the name of warfighting and readiness, if we can modify those standards and adapt them, and the department looks at it regularly and we have the opportunity to submit those kinds of recommendations, we continue to support the modernization of it, along with the systems that support them.
Okay, great. Lieutenant General Miller, Ms. Kelly, are you on a similar page here with the others?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Congressman, we are.
Yeah.
I am as well. The Space Force is uniquely positioned to test some of this as well, based on a little bit of a different service model that we have. So
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, we're certainly in support of the larger efforts as well.
No, I appreciate your willingness to think through this and figure out, again, how we can just continue to adapt to this. Another aspect that has come out in conversations here with this subcommittee, when the service's senior enlisted leaders have publicly advocated for significant military pay raise, especially amongst junior enlisted service members. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Do you agree with that assessment? Are there other compensation policies that should be reexamined? Maybe we'll start from right to left this time around.
Yes, thank you. The Space Force is certainly very much supportive of the look at what we can do for pay, especially for junior enlisted. We certainly are very appreciative of some of the feedback and the efforts that went into the quality of life report, and we're going to continue to partner with both Congress and inside the department to figure out where we go next. The piece that I think is also very important is that we are cognizant of and actively using the existing pay authorities that Congress has already given us. And I think from a Space Force perspective, because of some of the unique skill sets that we have, we're taking advantage of those today. And we look forward to the continued dialogue on where this goes. And we certainly want to be part of that conversation.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I will agree with Ms. Kelly that, looking at how to better make sure that our airmen and their families are taken care of, we're 100% all in. The challenge that we have, of course, is the MLPers approps. And so, it's tight right now. It's not going to get any better. So we're going to have the appropriations to go with that, but fully support that. The only other potential concern we have is, compression, if we're going to, how that's going to impact the higher ranks. So I think it's a whole, looking at everything, but any pay and benefits that we can do to support our airmen and their families, we are all in. Thank you.
Well, message received back to us. I mean, we know we need to be part of this equation as well, and wanted to get your thoughts on this. I just wanted to end with one last question, particular to Vice Admiral Cheeseman. You mirrored your future sailor program after the Army's. What do you think is the most important lesson learned since creating that program?
Yes, sir. Thanks for the question. For us, the physical side, we've seen a lot of benefits. We're a little bit behind on the academic side relative to where the Army is. They got a fresh start before we stood up. Where we're seeing benefits is when we have representation from the Navy in the classroom. Future sailors want to learn from other sailors. So it's not just about going out and getting contractors to maybe be your instructors or civilian instructors. We see real benefit in using other sailors, other people in the Navy that can talk to them, not just about academic progress, but life in the Navy. We're seeing good benefits from that, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Representative Gates?
Quality's down, quantity's down, but there was a bright spot I noticed in recruiting. We had Academy Nights recently in my district, and a new question rose to the top that I hadn't really heard in a lot of previous years. So many students came to me and said, Congressman, which of these academies should I go to if I want to be in the Space Force? And I think we've really ignited a sense of imagination and interest in the Space Force. How long until I'm able to offer these students a great space academy to attend?
Congressman, thank you so much for that question. We're certainly seeing a lot of interest in our own data. We don't have a strategy right now that says stand up our own academy. We're leveraging the Air Force at the moment. But I really appreciate the comment about the interest that is out there, and I will take that back.
Yeah, I think we should devise a plan to at least see what metrics or when that might be necessary and to plan for it. And what we've learned particularly about this generation is that there's got to be a real interest in that particular mission, that particular thing, not just the overall brand. And so that's why I think it would be helpful. I want to ask you some questions, General Glynn. What does it cost us to have a Marine Corps?
You mean the overall?
Yeah, just ballpark.
It's just over $50 billion a year.
Right. And how much of that do you manage in your portfolio?
It's just about, I'm trying to do math in my head here. When you divide, it's about $4 or $5 billion a year.
Okay. And what if we doubled it? Like what your portfolio. What if I gave you $2 for every dollar you get now? What would be like some stuff you could do?
There's a host of
It's exciting, isn't it? Right?
Investments in the people that yeah, immediately.
You probably weren't expecting that question from me.
It's not an offer I get very frequently.
Right, but what's interesting is it's like the offer we've made to Ukraine is actually more than the cost of the United States Marine Corps. In this supplemental that we are about to vote on, there's $61 billion for Ukraine, and it's about $50 billion to have a Marine Corps. So we could double our investment in the Marine Corps or we could vote for this supplemental. And I'm just going through it, and there's stuff here that is really insulting. The $300 million for the anti-narcotics efforts in Ukraine. So we're about to proceed onto a bill that does nothing to protect Americans from the narcos in Mexico and the Northern Triangle and in this country. But we got $300 million to go fight the narcos in Ukraine. And it doesn't end there. $250 million for the International Development Association. Now, I did not know what that was, but I knew it probably wasn't good. Turns out it's an arm of the World Bank. We are $34 trillion in debt. We are on a glide path to $50 trillion in debt. And we are borrowing money from China to give it to the World Bank. And then I looked at where this money got dispersed, and it's places like Niger. Niger, where we have Air Force and we have Army service members who are not getting their medicine, who are not able to get their troop rotations, who are not able to get their mail, because there are not diplomatic overflights allowed so that we can care for our own service members. So in a bit, we will hear many of our colleagues stand up and talk about how important it is to stand with our allies. But not even all this money's going to our allies. Some of it is potentially being recycled through globalist money washing accounts to redistribute. And that's really what this is about, what this supplemental is about. It is about creating a massive wad of unaccountable American cash. And when we have had the officials who are the inspectors general over this Ukraine sitting before us at those chairs, they cannot attest that the end-use monitoring is done and that this equipment is not falling into the wrong hands. Matter of fact, when we ask them those direct questions, they tell us, oh, well, we have to talk to you about that in the classified setting, not because the answers are particularly classified, but just because they're particularly embarrassing. So I'm incredibly proud of what you're doing at the Space Force. I hope we're able to ignite more young people toward that interest. If I didn't say so before, the $50 billion we spent on the United States Marine Corps is a tremendous investment. I know that because we've got Marines who work in our office and who are about our district, and we're incredibly proud of them. I yield back.
Back to the focus of our hearing. Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for your service to our country. I'm excited to get to questions that I have about the topic at hand. Lieutenant General Stitt, I am deeply concerned about the Army's review and consideration of potential cuts to the credentialing assistance and the tuition assistance program. Key education benefits like these programs are a core element of the incentives for military service, which are ever more important amidst a challenging recruitment and retention environment. Can you speak to the value of both the credentialing assistance and the tuition assistance programs? And while I know the Department of the Army has not yet issued decisions about any cuts to these programs, I really would like your input on how to reconcile any projected cuts in this recruiting and retention environment.
Representative Escobar, these are, as you stated, highly successful programs, both the tuition assistance and the credentialing assistance, and they are important programs as we look at retaining and assessing individuals into our force. And that's why we need to make sure that we are ensuring the long-term sustainability of both of these great programs with left and right limits.
Agree. I'd like to see a strategy for us, and Congress needs to focus on this, a strategy to ensure the longevity and investment in these programs. Thank you so much. General Glynn, really enjoyed our conversation earlier and would really love for you to expand a little bit and share with my colleagues a little bit about the Marine Corps Total Fitness Program. It was, to me, a great example of thinking through some of the challenges that our active duty service members are facing and ways to address them in a meaningful way. So please.
Thank you for the opportunity and for your enthusiasm about the topic. Marine Corps Total Fitness is the approach that we have adopted over the course of the last year to take a holistic view of the wellness of Marines and, frankly, their families. And so it's the intentional integration of 4 domains: mental, spiritual, social, and physical, and ensuring that every offering that we have doesn't just go after one domain, but offers all 4 so that folks are building a reservoir of wellness and they're prepared for the challenges of life, in particular military life. Our early efforts so far are very promising, and they get directly at many of the destructive behaviors that we've discussed with this subcommittee in the past.
Thank you so much. I think that your approach mirrors some of what I've seen in some of the other branches, but really I'm looking forward to, over the long term, seeing what the impact is and how helpful it is. I had the opportunity to serve on the quality of life panel that some of my colleagues here on this dais also participated in, and we did some really great work that I am excited about, hopefully getting out of the Congress to the President's desk and implementing. But even if we do all of those things, we still have to take care of the individual and the challenges that each individual and their families face. What I'd like to hear from some of our other witnesses really is how each branch, we've got actually we'll hear from Lieutenant General Stitt how the Army is handling this same issue. Wish we had time for everyone to respond. This is an important topic to me.
We take a similar approach with holistic health and fitness and working on our prevention across the force, going anywhere from providing, at the lowest level, linking soldiers up and doing, self-care, wellness checks across the force, at Fort Riley and in Alaska, they've mandated 100-day wellness checks and not just with a provider, but with a military family life consultant, educating and informing families on the resources that are available across our post camps and stations to really just connect and ensure that our soldiers understand that they have leaders in place that want to care for them.
Thank you. I'm out of time. Appreciate all of you. I yield back.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today. I want to touch on a topic that I've mentioned in the past because it is really important for us with regards to not just retention, but ensuring that our priorities are set in the right way. As a military veteran myself, our priorities in the military when I was in the U.S. Army was increased lethality, readiness, and being properly equipped. I still to this day think that we should be focused on those 3 topics to ensure that we're ready for any of our adversarial nations, regardless of the battlefield and regardless of the scenario. I want to give a special hoorah to our Marine General here. You guys have done an amazing job on your recruitment efforts and maintaining not only retention, but recruiting the best and brightest when it comes to the Marine Corps. So I want to thank you for that, and I hope that we can get our recruitment efforts up in the remaining armed service groups so that we can also meet those challenges and not reduce our standards, as we've recently seen with the Navy, where we're actually even waiving the ability for a diploma in high school, I believe, is now the requirement. But as I talk about that, I want to get to something that's really kind of near and dear. Does either of you across your services know how many service members were unconstitutionally pushed out of the military due to the forced COVID vaccine requirements? By all means, please jump right on in.
For the Space Force, none.
Sir, I'm concerned about the adjective used with unconstitutionally, so.
It's my own opinion, but I'll
Yes,
tell you
sir,
what, I'll make
take
it
a
easy
number.
for you,
Yes, sir.
Vice Admiral. How many people were pushed out of the Navy due to the actual refusal of taking the COVID
I
vaccination?
believe we had 1,878 separations.
Gotcha. No, that's challenging. Sir, General Stitt.
Representative Mills, I'd like to take that question for the record. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head.
Understood. Thank you, sir. General Glenn.
Sir, well, we achieved a greater than 97% vaccination rate. During that period, we had about 3,700 that left the service.
Now, would it shock any of you to know that those who had applied for religious or medical freedom exemptions, that their entire documentation, granted, through the military process, through the federal government, through review of their actual submissions, that their requirements were actually being seen, educated, and decisions made within less than 5 minutes of each application?
I would be surprised with that. That's not how the Air Force did it.
The Department of Defense Inspector General reported that on average, it took less than 5 minutes to adjudicate processes on service-wide for those who were seeking certain military, medical, or religious exemptions, which was shocking to me because I work in the federal government, so I know we're not that efficient. But my issue with this is that I don't think that that permitted the necessary timeline when you think about what would actually have to be requested, because they would have had to have gone to their priest, to their, whichever the religious figure was that they were actually looking at, as well as for maybe even their own physician or other doctors that would have been able to verify these types of things. So I would ask that each of you look at the process or procedures that are being utilized to ensure that the necessary adjudication is actually being done for those who are actually seeking that. In looking at additional information, I'd like to ask and determine, can any of you elaborate on why anyone removed from the military for refusing the untested vaccine would be given less than honorable discharge?
Sir, I can speak for the Navy. Nobody that left the Navy was given anything other than an honorable discharge.
They weren't given a general or a Category 3 for their reenlistment?
The characterization was honorable. I'll have to take the question for the record on the RE code and get back.
Because general is still different than an honorable, as we all know, especially when it comes to your reenlistment status, correct?
Yes, sir, it is. But
Okay.
Everybody who left the United States Navy received an honorable discharge. I'll have to verify the RE code to be sure.
For those, though, that so all of those that were left from the Air Force, we have personally submitted a letter to them saying, gave them the process to come back. And of all of the ones that have come back, we've boarded 98. 98 have been approved to come back with an honorable.
Lieutenant General Stent or General Glenn, would you guys like to apply to that at all? Or
Similar processes, Representative Mills. We followed in DoD guidance and sent individual soldiers a letter instructing them how to come back, utilizing their local recruiter and pursuing return via the Army Board of Correction for military review.
Well, I thank you. My time's expired, but I will say that one of the things I truly believe is that those who, in my vision and my view, was unconstitutionally purged out of our military for these vaccines should be reinstated, full back pay, full benefits, and be given a chance to serve the United States military, not the United States President's agenda or any other. So with that, I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Based on the last reports we have available, fiscal year 22, there were 8,942 reports of sexual assault. And a prevalence rate, which is the estimate of how many sexual assaults occurred in the military, was at 36,000. When we take a look at it by different service branches, in 2022, Air Force saw a 13% increase, Navy saw a 9% increase, Marine Corps 3.6%, and Army, while a decrease of 9%, had a prior year's total of a massive 26% rise in reported sexual assault. My question for you folks today is, how does sexual assault in your branches at these levels undermine our overall readiness and, quite frankly, impact our ability to recruit and retain service members? Anyone can start.
Representative Takuda, good afternoon. We take sexual assault very seriously and are started with the Office of the Special Trial Counsel now that we've implemented so that those sexual assault cases are now being prosecuted through that office, and then leveraging through the Department of Defense the integrated prevention assistance groups where we are facilitating at individual post camps and stations a commander's ability to see themselves through greater data collection, integration with local law enforcement, CID on post, because every post camp and station is different, and some of the risk factors around a post camper station in one location are going to be different than another. So this IPAG enables that commander to get a better understanding of their environment, and then that respective commander and the leadership there can flex those resources and programs to meet those challenges.
I guess I would just like a simple answer for that and appreciate, we'll talk about the STCs a little bit later on, but bottom line, do you think sexual assault in your branch impacts your ability to be ready and prepared to fight when we need to? And does this impact recruitment and retention? It can be a simple yes or no answer.
Representative Takuda, any behavior that detracts from our ability to perform our warfighting mission infringes upon readiness.
Thank you.
Ma'am, similar answer for the Navy. Absolutely. Sexual assault, any harmful behavior destroys unit cohesion and affects the mission. Yes, ma'am.
I think we all agree that sexual assault is a crime that plagues many organizations, and it's an issue across the nation, not just for uniformed services, but yes, it directly contributes to readiness of a unit.
I would concur with that. Additionally, in order to defend the Constitution, we have to have trust in one another, and if we can't trust the individuals that are in our formation, it absolutely impacts readiness.
Ma'am, I would concur with my colleagues.
Thank you. And then I agree what was just said, I believe, by Lieutenant General Glenn there, that yes, sexual assault plagues many organizations, but at a prevalence rate this high for an institution that is entrusted with the safeguarding of our national security, these are absolutely unacceptable. These absolutely impact our readiness and, quite frankly, undermine every single effort you folks have put forth and talked about today to recruit and retain the very best to defend our country, to keep our families safe. I know I'm running short on time, but I did, first of all, want to commend Secretary Austin and his leadership for prioritizing sexual assault prevention, since we have seen, sadly, such drastic increases in numbers of assault, and responding by establishing the Office of the Special Trial Counsels. Earlier today, I actually had a meeting with a number of survivors of sexual assault who experienced sexual assault during their time in uniform. And they talked to me about what it was like to live through that experience, and quite frankly, what it's been like after, and what they'd like to see done. So my question really, and you can provide more answers later, is about how you've been able to implement these special trial counsels and, quite frankly, build up a primary prevention and sexual response workforce as well that's critical as the secondary part to try to prevent these things from happening. But given that this was a landmark moment in history in terms of military justice systems, now that we're a few months in, I believe you started it up at the beginning of this year, in terms of these offices becoming fully functional, operational, I'd like to get a sense of the early impacts. So going through the branches, perhaps you can submit this later since I'm running out of time, what are some early takeaways about the offices of the Special Trial Counsel that are important for this committee to know? What have been challenges or successes? What kind of metrics and methods are you using to measure the success and impact of the Office of the Special Trial Counsel? And in terms of initial caseloads, do you have sufficient staffing in each of your offices of Special Trial Counsel? And in particular, I'd like to know how we are moving more of those restricted reports to unrestricted reports so people can get the help that they need. Thank you. I'm out of time. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. By the way, to begin with, a historical bit of data on Marine Corps budgeting. 1972, when the fiscal year ended on June 30th, we were both pleased to return money to the Department of Defense from our Marine Corps budget, but at the same time, fly unnecessary flight hours to burn gas so we could get our allotment. So there's a certain dichotomy there that doesn't quite fit. I appreciate that we hopefully continue to set a standard in warfighting, and I'm referring to myself as a Marine here, but I know that we all of you at the table, fight the war in a different uniform, a different mission, but with the same passion for our national defense and our defense of freedoms. Lieutenant General Stitt, you testified that the Army developed 2 new military occupational specialties, 420T, Talent Acquisition Technician, and 42T, Talent Acquisition Specialist. And I guess the 420T is going to be a warrant officer. Did I get that right?
That is correct, Representative.
Okay, will they have promotion opportunities all the way through CWO5?
That is correct.
Okay, so as you develop this talent acquisition team, you know, you're going to do a rigorous selection and training process to recruit interested young Americans. These folks are going to be career recruiters?
That is correct.
Okay, so how does the Army plan to incentivize these competitively selected and skilled talent acquisition technicians and talent acquisition specialists to stay in the Army past an initial enlistment?
Right now, we're in the developmental stages for MOS 42 Tango and with the enlisted MOS. Within the warrant officer specialty, we are looking at continuity pay that already exists within the force for our warrant officers, but also looking at potential non-monetary incentives such as stability at a location of choice. We're still looking at all our options, Representative Bergen.
Okay. What I'd like to to take for the record as you develop the long-term incentives, because when you think about it, it's one thing to recruit someone, whether it be officer or enlisted, to an initial contract. It's a whole different set of goals, if you will, when it comes to FTAP, STAP, and towards a 20-plus year career. So I'd just like to see, as the Army develops this, just your metrics to make sure your incentives work. Because we can put them out, but if we do not then check to see if they, steal on target, if you will, then what good were they? Okay. Lieutenant General Glenn, you stated that the Marine Corps made its recruiting mission in fiscal year 2023 and is currently on track to meet it again this fiscal year. How has the structure and role of the MCRC, Marine Corps Recruiting Command, ensured the Marine Corps makes its recruiting mission?
Congressman, thanks for that question, and to your opening comment about the money in the budget. I mean, you're well aware we had the first clean audit in the history of any military service, so we're pretty proud of knowing where every dollar goes to. In the case of MCRC, Marine Corps Recruiting Command continues to be a very adaptive and dynamic organization, constantly looking at where it is. Our commitment remains the same, to be in every zip code, in every state, in every territory of the nation, but ensuring that we are located as where we need to be to ensure that we have the messaging and we have the contact with young men and women who might be inclined but are uninformed about the future of military service and the future of service in a Marine Corps uniform.
Okay, and like I say, I got 26 seconds left. What would you guess the percentage of your Marines, both officer and enlisted, who are really excited about going to be recruiters as opposed to staying in a deployable unit?
I would say it's
Small.
not the majority.
It's small. That's right, but that's
but-
okay. You sent them. That's okay. It's not. I don't want to be a trick question here.
Yes, sir.
We need to send the best to the recruiting field to recruit the best, so they can train them to fight. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Chairman Banks and Ranking Member Kim, for the hearing. My district in Nevada covers almost 50,000 square miles, includes both one of the fastest growing housing markets in the country and in rural communities. It's also home to Nellis Air Force Base with more than 11,000 military members that must compete for critical services in a rapidly growing district, and at Creech Air Force Base, also in my district, which has 3,500 service members who lack access to critical services at their duty location and must travel 100 miles a day in order to access childcare, military housing, and healthcare services. Access to safe, secure, and affordable housing is a concern of many of our constituents. As recruits consider military service, the availability and affordability of adequate housing is a concern. Nellis Air Force Base is among the installations with the highest levels of unmet housing need. This time last year, that unmet housing need meant that young airmen were being released into off-base community housing after 11 months. It concerns me that since then, the issue has only worsened, with airmen now being released after only 8 months. Lieutenant General Miller, I don't have to tell you that 8 months is very short of the Air Force's requirement of 36 months time in service. So I'll ask you the same question I asked Secretary Kendall and General Alvin earlier today, but I want to ask you, can you speak to the importance of ensuring adequate housing availability for both recruitment and retention of military members, and what is currently being done to address the needs of our young unaccompanied airmen at installations such as Nellis?
Yes, Congressman, thank you. And I will tell you that housing is absolutely a readiness issue. It is a quality of life that we have to make sure that we have safe and quality housing. So at Nellis in particular, we just did a $4.5 million dorm renovation. We also have 2 projects coming up for Milcon that are in design to do that. We're partnering with the community to find additional housing. We know that Creech is a continual challenge because of the distance, and so we're looking at all sorts of opportunities to get childcare out there, do busing, and so that is a big focus item for us.
Okay. Well, at the Nellis issue and those investments, I'm proud to have worked with this committee to secure. The problem is that's to replace other housing that's coming
Yes, sir.
off. So it's not really in addition to, it's in place of. And so we really need a larger commitment to housing in these unmet areas if we're going to address the recruitment and retention issue. On the Creech side of the equation, I look forward to partnering with you. I've identified a number of opportunities in partnership with the local YMCA and other child care providers in and near Creech Air Force Base. Let me turn to another issue around health care, which is also a critical piece of the support that we need to provide to military members throughout their careers. For members at Creech Air Force Base, many airmen must travel to Nellis Air Force Base, as I said, to receive specialty health care, resulting in months-long wait times and increased cost. Additionally, the transition of the services health care to the Defense Health Agency has resulted in many members having increased concerns with their access to medical care. So to the panel, can you speak to the impact that the changes to the military health care system are having on our ability to recruit and retain top talent?
Representative Horsford, I think we're in a very competitive environment with a nationwide shortage of providers. So in conjunction with the Office of our Surgeon General and DHA, we're taking on this challenge. It's very serious, and we acknowledge absolutely we need to take care of our soldiers and families and continue to work forward on this.
Sir, I travel often in my role, and this is, darn near the #1 concern I hear from family members. So, similar to my Army counterpart, our Surgeon General works closely with DHA. As SecNev testified yesterday, we're willing to take risk, in short term with the operational medical forces as we cover down with DHA to make sure we're, addressing these things appropriately. But, underinvestment and under execution need to be addressed, and we look forward to moving out together with DHA.
I know we're out of time. I want to thank our witnesses for being here. These are critically important issues. Thank you for your service, and I look forward to having my office follow up with you. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Chairman Banks, and thank you to our witnesses for your service and for being here today. Personnel and recruiting are dynamic issues. Today's generation is not like the generation of World War II. This is okay. As a father of 7 children under the age of 20, I get it. And it doesn't mean there aren't future heroes and noble public servants in today's youth. Generations change, and as they will, we must change our recruiting methods to ensure that military service remains a tangible and viable option, not solely an abstract one. So let me be clear, our individual service members are the most important collective part of the U.S. military.
This importance begins with their recruitment and continues through their civic engagement as veterans. Before we consider all the fancy gadgets within modernization portfolios, we must consider the former, current, and future groups of service members that will defend the American way of life. Military family health and wellness equals enhanced military readiness, and I look forward to supporting the quality of life focus in the FY25 NDAA. So let's talk recruitment for a little bit here. The Air Force has managed to improve their recruiting situation while the Army and Navy continue to struggle despite no lack of effort. The Marine Corps, to its credit, appears to consistently make its recruiting mission. So at the risk of a cage match fight breaking out between all of you, I want to learn from this, and I want us to be able to hear the secret sauce of success here. So Lieutenant General Miller and Lieutenant General Glynn, what has the Air Force done to improve its recruiting success, and what are the tenets of the Marine Corps success in recruiting?
Yes, Congressman, thank you. We've looked internally, and we looked at barriers that we were putting on restraining ourselves from an adequate recruiting pool. So we looked at things such as our tattoo policy was incredibly stringent, and we hadn't needed to change up until this point, and so we looked into that and what was reasonable. Additionally, our body composition was higher than it was relatively low, so we just increased that to make sure that we were still maintaining in DoD standards, and we looked at driver's license. We had restricted many career fields because they had to have driver's license. And so all of those internal barriers, not lowering standards, we did not lower standards, but we just made those small policy changes. We were able to increase our pool of applicants. And additionally, we had a campaign, last year, I think, if you were going to go into the service, you weren't going to be paid enough, you were going to be sexually assaulted, all of these negative things, we needed to change that, because if you look at our retention numbers, if you come into the service, our retention numbers are incredibly high. So we've been working on all facets of that, sir.
Congressman, thanks for the opportunity to comment on it. I wouldn't say that there's one single item that's a special sauce, as you alluded to, but I would say our commitment over years, first and foremost, has been in the quality of Marine that we put out there as a representative of our Corps, and to ensure that that individual is representative to the part of the nation zip code as I alluded to earlier, that young men and women can possibly see themselves in becoming a United States Marine. That would be the first thing. The second thing is our commandants over the years, and I've been on recruiting several times, have been fully committed to ensuring that those that volunteer, go on recruiting duty, and succeed are recognized, rewarded, promoted, in whatever tangible and intangible ways that are required. So there are clear and compelling reasons to go and be a recruiter and do well as a recruiter. The last thing I would say is that through our recruiters, we try to listen to young folks, like the 7 young folks you alluded to. What appeals to them? And over again, it was in my opening statement, a desire to serve something bigger than themselves. And so we challenge them with the opportunity to earn the title Marine and go on and take that unique title to apply in unique areas of the world, in unique circumstances, and have the memories of a lifetime. It's why I continue to do it.
That's great, and I appreciate that. And I will just say again, as a father of 7, clarity of mission is always something that is very crucial to motivating at least my 7. When they can firmly believe in what I'm putting in front of them, I get amazing results. And so I appreciate hearing that from you. Maybe just, I guess my time is up here, but I would just say thank you again, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you, specifically around recruiting and quality of life issues as we move to the NDA process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair and Ranking Member Kim, and our witnesses today for being here. As a member with 2 premier defense installations in our district, Fort Leonard Wood and Whiteman Air Force Base, I care deeply about the service members' personnel issues, and that's why I'm on this subcommittee. This Congress, I was honored to sit on the Quality of Life panel and sign the recommendations designed to improve the standard of living for our service members, all of which will be in the National Defense Authorization Act and will pass. I'm very excited for these. I believe the recommendation for a 15% pay raise for junior enlisted will be a significant step in the right direction, especially for retention efforts. But there's much that we can do in Congress and the Department of Defense needs to do to address the challenges facing our fighting force today. In fiscal year 2023, the Department of Defense failed to meet its recruiting goal by 41,000 recruits. It's a huge shortfall. It includes industrial-based procurement lethargy and backlogs, as well as incredibly deterring hostile competitors in multiple regions across the globe. All sorts of factors that we need to act upon. Kind of want to have a philosophical discussion, and I know we're probably not in the business of theorizing, but Lieutenant General Stitt, I know that only 9% of Americans' young people right now have any interest in joining the military. Some military families are actually discouraging their children and grandchildren from joining, which is a very sad thing. Why do you think that is, and what is the Army doing to try to change that?
Representative Alford, I think what we are seeing this year to date is great progress within recruiting, and we remain cautiously optimistic today that we will achieve our fiscal year 2024 mission of 55,000 accessions into the active component and have 5,000 individuals contracted into our delayed entry program for next year. We have undertaken a significant overhaul of our recruiters and our recruiting workforce and our recruiting structure, looking at who we recruit, how we recruit, and with whom are we doing our recruiting. And when we talk about who we recruit, we look at the totality of the United States labor market. Let's move beyond just having a conversation with a potential applicant who's in high school, but looking at a labor force right now where students in high school are about 80% are graduating from high school and going on to a college, a university, or a two-year school. So upskilling and reskilling our recruiting workforce to not only engage high schoolers, but engage those who are attending college but may not complete, and then also engaging others that are in the workforce today but may be looking for other options. How we recruit, utilizing and connecting with America today and where they live in the digital sphere, utilizing digital job boards, LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor, and then piloting and innovating across the nation, starting small, learning, collecting data, and then moving on, taking those lessons learned. And then with whom we are recruiting, moving away from a borrowed military manpower situation where we're disrupting cohesion and readiness to identify a sergeant of infantry to go serve temporarily as a recruiter, but creating a professionalized workforce across the nation that can start to thin the lines and send those other non-commissioned officers back in to do the jobs across the force and enhance our readiness.
Missions are becoming more technical. The skills needed are different than they were 20, 30 years ago. Do you see a time, Lieutenant General Stitt, where basic training as we know it is no longer needed for many of the people we're trying to get into the military, casting a wider net to be able to get some of these people in to do specific jobs, not firing, not fighting on the front lines necessarily, but to operate machinery and equipment that is more technical in nature?
What we are seeing right now, Representative Alford, is particularly within the officer corps, is utilization of authorities from the 2019 NDAA for direct accession and into the service. We've brought in, off the top of my head, around 16 individuals to serve in our branch as cyber officers. So we are utilizing the authorities to go out and continue to evolve and adapt our recruiting.
Thank you. I'm out of time. Thank you so much again for being here, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all to our witnesses for your service. And we are in, as I think you've heard loud and clear from the committee today, and I know that all of you, your service secretaries and chiefs are focused on this, but we're in an absolute recruiting crisis. And what we have here, I don't know if you can read it, but This was through the end of November. It's a quarter old. But basically, the services are making their numbers, not Army or Navy. I know that we've had some improvement, Army, in Q2, or the first quarter of this calendar year. But I think it's important for everybody watching, listening, to appreciate that even if you make those numbers, and that's an if still, we'll see, we're not digging out of the hole, right? I mean, we've got now the smallest Army since World War II. And so first question, I'd like you to talk about, what does it take, not just to hit the numbers, but then how do we dig out of that trough that we found ourselves in the last 2 years? And keep in mind, worth stating, Mr. Chairman, that this Congress prevented the expulsion of another 20,000 after going down 45,000 for a vaccine that doesn't stop the spread, which made it, in I think many people's view, then a personal health decision. So thank God we didn't go that far. But talk to me about how we dig out of the hole. What do you need to exceed to get us out in, let's say, the next 3 years, 2027 being pretty important since Chairman Xi told his military to be ready to go by then. I think we need to be ready to go by then. How do we dig out of the hole? I'll go to you, General Stitt. You've got the biggest one to dig out of.
Representative Waltz, we didn't arrive at these recruiting challenges overnight.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to dig ourselves out of the hole overnight. As I just stated, our transformation efforts across USAREC, our direct support of United States Army Recruiting Command efforts from the totality of the Army, active duty operational formations supporting recruiting efforts around the country, the returns that we're seeing from Be All You Can Be.
Great ad during March Madness, by the way. I think you have a lot more recruits that want to jump out of planes and kick in doors and do bad things to bad guys, responding to that, I hope, than the previous ads we've had, which I still don't know why we had those. But anyway, nice correction.
The Coach Krzyzewski ad is showing very favorable returns.
But talk to me, I mean, just in the time I have remaining, we have to dig out of the last couple of years, not just break even. So let's talk about exceeding goals to make up for the hole that we're in. So in 3 years, you have to have, what, 10, 15,000 on top of your current goal? Is that roughly right?
We would estimate that we would need somewhere, depending on where we finish in 24, 25, we would, would like to get us back up to around 470K by the end of the program
Navy, your CNO is I think being very candid, and I appreciate it, that you're, 18,000 short, she just said, in terms of at-sea needs, and about 4,000 short here on shore. The Army is having great success with a prep course, pre-basic training. Talk to me about what Navy's doing to emulate that, and I know that sounds like a go Army, beat Navy kind of question. It's not, but
no.
How can we emulate success?
Sir, not too proud not to take lessons and learn them from my Army friends. Sir, to your point about the numbers, CNO and I share your concerns, which is why you see our recruiting mission for this year as 40,600. We took what we missed last year and added it to what we need to do this year, partially. Because we recognize it's not just about end strength, it's about work requirements in the fleet that we need to maintain so we can build out of that trough. So I think you can expect us to have similar missions in the years to come as we build up that work requirement and eventually outnumber just the end strength. And I'm going to my Navy friends and hopefully this body asking for more end strength to come back, because that's the glide slope we're on. To your point about numbers, we're 2,500 recruits ahead of where we were this time last year. Mm-hmm. And in FY23, while we did miss mission, we were 6,000 recruits better than we were the year before. So we're trending in the right direction.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask one more. I think I'm the end. General Miller, I asked this question of your secretary. You're the only service that requested, with the budget request, a decline in junior ROTC. I think we would all agree, and your service chiefs have all agreed, not only do you get a recruit out of high school ROTC, you get a better citizen. And by the way, Senator Wicker and I have worked to increase the authorization up to 4,000. So why the decline if we're in the midst of a recruiting crisis?
I don't know why the decline in the JROTC, but I would say that as a citizens program, I think they're fantastic because they treat.
And we're also, thank you, I appreciate that on the record, we're also working to decrease the minimum numbers. We have junior ROTC departments in high schools, most of them in minority parts of the country, majority high schools, with say 96, 97 cadets, but the requirement's 100.
Right.
So they're on a probation list. We're working to reduce that. Is there anyone that would oppose that? Okay, I'll take that as a no.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, no? Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the indulgence.
I want to thank all of our witnesses again for your service and for being here with us today to talk about these important issues. I hope that you'll take back some of the issues that we discussed today to your service chiefs and discuss them. Talk about concrete actions that we need to take to mitigate the problems that we face when it comes to recruitment and other issues. Appreciate all of you being here today. With no further business, the subcommittee stands adjourned.